this is Dominic, wedding DJ.
And this is Serena, wedding planner.
And together we are the Wedding Duo. We are here to talk all things weddings.
Planning a wedding can be stressful, but we are here to help.
So before you say, that's it, we're going to Vegas, don't go to Vegas.
Let's have some fun.
Join us as we answer your wedding questions and help navigate planning one of the biggest days of your life with the Wedding Duo.
Welcome back to the Wedding Duo podcast. Woo, we're here again.
I'm waving for those YouTube viewers, but
there's not many of them.
There's not many. I know. I talked to a virtual client not long ago, and she said, well, I watched your video. I go, you watched it? Hooray!
Woo!
You watched it. I'm glad to see all this effort to put it on YouTube is not in vain.
Yeah. If you really want to see our faces while we're talking, you can watch any of our podcast episodes on YouTube. But also, we have a few episodes of fun stuff that we've done. So check it out.
True.
Mm-hmm.
Some might say silly.
Some might say silly. Some might say silly. Yes, we border.
I like silly. There's a lack of silliness in the world, is my thoughts.
That's true.
We go down this rabbit hole. Why are that? Well, people want to be professional, but you can still be professionally silly.
I think so. I think there's room for both.
I don't know if you can be a professional silly person, but I mean, there are people that do that. But
you are a professional silly person.
But I take the day and the event very seriously.
I don't even mean at weddings. I'm talking about
business very seriously
in life.
But yeah, outside of that, like heck yeah, be more silly, giggle more. Let's giggle more.
Well, today's topic is not silly. It's kind of serious. I mean, not serious, but it's controversial. I know that.
We're kicking the bee's nest today.
A little bit. We are going to talk about tipping in the wedding industry.
The tipping side of the wedding world.
Okay, because this comes up a lot. This question of should I tip? Who do I tip? How much do I tip? It can be overwhelming for couples to try to figure out, navigate, if you will, the tipping world, right?
Very true.
Now, before
we dive into it, can I say another silly story from last weekend?
Oh my gosh.
I like to have a silly story, not a silly story, just something amusing. We did this one together, actually. We were doing the Footloose.
The dance?
And when I say doing the Footloose, before I started DJing in Texas, I didn't realize there was a line dance to the Footloose, but people do a very similar dance to that of the movie. And the first time I saw it in Texas, I was like, are y'all doing the dance? And they all looked at me like, yeah. And I go,
that's what we do.
We didn't do this in California. I'd play the song and people would just dance to it. But at our wedding, there was a gal out there doing it quite well. And if you don't know it, it's an upper echelon experience. It goes very fast.
It's difficult.
And if you're drunk or you don't know it, it's not one you can just jump in the middle and pick up. She was out there holding a 2-year-old.
Maybe a little younger.
Mm-hmm. A toddler for sure. Mm-hmm. Not like an infant, a toddler who was just giggling and smiling the whole time being bounced around the dance floor. But she was doing it well. Like she was right on beat doing it like right. I'm very impressed.
It was
so
impressive.
At the end, I got on the mic. I go, ma'am, you get bonus points for doing the Footloose while holding the baby. And what'd she do? Do you remember?
I don't remember.
She touches her belly and says, 2 babies. And I go,
that's right.
My God, she's
That's right. She
was like,
so great.
I mean, I don't even know what to say. I go, that's like super extra bonus points for that. Yep. I was like, it was just so amusing that she looked up and she was like, 2 babies. I go, wow.
Yes,
I'm
queen.
Just even more,
yes.
I was like, you go, girl. I was very impressed.
Absolutely.
Anyway, you were saying something about tipping.
We were going to say something about tipping. So we want to start this off by saying we have our opinion.
Yes.
As wedding vendors on this topic. Other vendors are going to have other opinions. Okay. There is a lot of information out there online, and we're going to reference some of that right now to get us started. Right. So if you go to some of the big websites, and we're not going to list the exact site we got this off of, but they will give you a breakdown of the percentage or how much you should expect to tip in each category. Okay. So list off some of them and we'll start there.
So these are some of the usual suspects. And this is what is off this form that we have downloaded from, like she said, you would know it if you heard it. Photographers and videographers, $50 to $100 per person. Mm-hmm. Because oftentimes there's a second shooter in both those categories.
Correct.
I put on my spectacles.
So that could be, let's say you have 2 for photo, 2 for video. You tip each one, let's say $100. That's $400 right there for that.
There you go.
Okay.
Wedding coordinators / planners, 10 to 20% of the total bill, up to $500.
Okay, that's so confusing, right? Because up to $500, well, it depends on how long you've been working with the couple, right? How big their package is. If you're a full-scale planning couple, you're going to have a much higher ticket, right?
Then it's going to go over 500.
It's going to go over 500, which is good that they have that threshold there, right? Because I'm just going to say this, like, if someone gave me over a $500 tip, I would be grateful, but it's not, I mean.
Surprise also.
It's a lot.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
And it's not, I would say that's not traditional. I'm not a planner. You are.
Right.
We get tipped and we have a pretty good idea of what generally comes through. So let me finish this. So wedding venue coordinator / catering captain, $250 to $500 or 15 to 20% of the food and drink bill. Again, that can be
That's interesting to me.
Depending on, yeah, because they're usually an employee, right?
Right.
Oftentimes of the venue, which is not to say that they don't deserve a tip, because that's just like saying a waiter or waitress at a restaurant. Well, they don't, they're not, but it's a different animal.
Yeah. And let's move on, because we're going to get into our opinion of this
Sure.
after.
Okay, let me just finish reading.
Yeah.
Officiant, the person who did the ceremony, $50 to $100. Ceremony musicians, I did a TikTok on this just last weekend because we had a string quartet. $15 to $20 per musician.
Interesting.
Here's the interesting one. Florist, 10 to 15% of the total bill. And that does not have the little up to 500. It just says that. We were just talking to one of our staff who just got married. Her floor bill was $8,000. You could do the math in your head there.
You could.
Florist would get the biggest tip out of anybody ever. Hair and makeup artist, hairstylist and makeup artist, 15 to 25% of the total. Transportation, 15 to 20%. Wedding band, $20 to $25 per musician. Why the band get stiff? That's not.
I know.
Wedding DJ, $1 million. No. 100% of the, no. It says 50 to 150.
Okay.
Reception wait staff, 15 to 20% of labor cost on the food and drink bill. Bartender, 10% of the total bill.
Okay.
Delivery personnel, $5 to $10 per person. So there's just a start.
Okay. So let's
putting it down.
That gives you an idea of like the expectation that has been put out there for couples maybe to tip their vendors. And the wedding industry is a tipping industry. It's a service industry, right? So what does that mean? That means that tips happen, right? They're not necessarily, they don't happen all the time, but they are part of the wedding world.
But not everybody knows that for sure, because there are ends of the nights. Oftentimes at the end of an event, a couple will come up to me and they'll just be like, Dominic, best day ever. I had no idea. My parents have never danced. You had them out there all night. Like they're just gushing over how great of a job, but they don't tip because they just didn't,
they don't realize.
I would rather get those kudos than $100, but how about both? Both is fine for sure, right? I mean, no, I don't like money, but there's no question that they were over the top with the job that I had done. But it's not. But they didn't. But they didn't. They just. I don't think. I would never be like, yeah, well, where's the tip? I would never ever in a million years say that. But there's other nights that I feel like I just did the job. It wasn't like an epic event, but I got a tip because they just, it was just assumed that they would tip.
But that it's not. You're assuming that they don't know it's a tipping industry and that's why they didn't tip you. But that's not always the case. There are people out there that feel wedding planning is expensive, wedding vendors are expensive, and that the price of your service is sufficient to cover, and that's okay, right?
You didn't catch that yet. It's expensive.
Right.
Planning a wedding, doing a wedding is expensive.
So I mentioned earlier that we were going to kind of give our philosophy, and realistically, we feel that a tip should be earned. Okay. So this idea that across the board, you're just going to blanket tip everybody, but maybe you didn't have a great experience with whoever, right? It really is kind of unfortunate that couples feel that pressure.
For sure.
And
like you said, on top of an already very expensive day and industry. And have you added up all those tips? Have you had all those vendors that we just rattled off?
A lot.
Holy cow. That is extra, like, how many more thousands of dollars did you just kick in right there?
And that's something that you may want to talk about early on when you're doing your budget. It is helpful to know ahead of time that it's a tipping industry, so you can budget for tips. But I also don't want couples to feel like, hey, if someone, was late or they were rude or they, didn't do what they said they were going to do, that you feel you automatically have to tip this person because it's a tipping industry.
I think people lose sight of that. Like, it should be something that is, you exceeded expectations, you crushed it, you were like, they were just so grateful. That's what warrants a tip, right? That's ultimately what it is. And you're right. If somebody, like you said, it happens where somebody just is just like, you're not really holding up your weight here, like it just one vendor is just dragging and just not doing it. But what happens a lot, let's talk about how people tip. I mean, I can't tell you how often I'm still setting up and a wedding planner comes up, flips through a bunch of envelopes and hands one that says DJ on it to me.
Right.
And I'm like, I haven't even done anything yet. Now I've got this pressure to perform. I'm like, what if I screw it up? And I've already been tipped. So that's another thing but as the planner, that's a big ass to walk around with envelopes of cash all night. God forbid you drop it or lose it or somebody knows what's in those envelopes. I mean, I don't want.
Right.
But that's scary too.
So here's something that I want couples to hear. Like, you can plan out your tips. Mean exactly what he just said. Make sure that you have envelopes for each of your vendors that you want to tip. And you'll probably have a pretty good feel leading up to the day of how this vendor is or if they've done their job or not, right? But it's okay also from a planner for my couple to say, like, I don't feel like comfortable tipping that person, like mid-event, right? Because I do not usually hand out envelopes at the beginning of the event.
I know you don't, but
for that reason.
And again, I'm not trying to judge any planners out there that do that, because that's exactly right. Like, they get nervous carrying around all this cash in their little clipboard and they want to get it and they don't want to forget, because there's sometimes vendors that have left early. Maybe the photographer is only contracted till 9 and the end of the night, you're like, oh my God, I didn't. And then now that looks bad on the planner, like you're trying to keep it yourself or something. I mean, it's terrible. All that stuff. So it's really, you really have to be, focused. And when do you do it? So it's a thing, but now what are you going to do if like somebody drops the ball? You're not going to go up and say like, oh, the bride wants that tip back. You didn't.
Exactly.
So it's challenging, right? That's another whole side of it. And that's more on our side than y'all's, but it's a thing, right?
I just want couples to feel comfortable telling their planner, like, I'm disappointed in what has happened, and I can you withhold that? So that's okay. And the other thing to be mindful of is sometimes it's nice I think, because we've gotten into this habit of like, yes, you put together little envelopes beforehand, but it's sometimes nice for the couple to actually hand the tip to the vendor and thank them, right? Because it means a lot to hear those kudos, like you just said, of they're so grateful and it was a wonderful day. So, just keep that in mind too. I know y'all, it's a whirlwind of a day and there's a lot going on, but sometimes I think it makes a little more sense for the couple to actually be the one to present a tip or something to consider.
Plan B.
You can tip them after. Okay. No vendor is going to receive the email that says, can I please tip you? You did a great job, and say no. Okay. They'll give you their, they'll send you an invoice for it. I don't know, Venmo, whatever, but you can mail them a thank you note with cash inside, whatever, so just don't feel like you don't have options. Like, this isn't something that you get to decide on, right? That is my biggest thing. And for any of you vendors out there that are listening, and
through clenched jaws,
and maybe you're getting upset because we're not like saying tipping is mandatory.
Everyone tip everyone.
I really think, you have to consider the couple side of things too, right? They're paying a lot of money for services. And in reality, you should be able to function without tips. You should build the price of what you need for your business into the price of your service.
Well, and speaking of built in, for the couples out there, check the contracts, make sure that there's not already a gratuity included, because that sometimes happens and you feel obligated to tip.
It happens.
They've already, it happens.
Especially with food and beverage, right? So there's also kind of a thing out there about like the bar and having a tip jar. I know a lot of planners, or not a lot, but there are some planners that don't like the appearance of like a tip jar
Or
out
couples.
on
The couples
or
might
the
not
couple
like it,
doesn't
yeah.
want that. So talk to your bar service about potentially providing the gratuity yourself. And again, like he said, catering, that kind of thing. Sometimes those gratuities are already included in your bill. So you don't really want to be double tipping unless they really did a great job. But
I see the tip jar on the bar all the time.
Yeah.
Or the Venmo app or the Venmo QR code is right there.
sure.
And I think people will go up to the bar with the idea that they're going to drop a 1 or 5 in the jar. I mean, that happens all the time.
It is,
I've had
but
DJs tell me, or other people say like, where's your tip jar, DJ? I go,
no.
in a million years, I would never.
But then how is it any different?
It's not any different.
It's not.
But I mean, I have people come up and say, can you play this song and give me $5? But if it's a song that's not on the playlist or it's on the do not playlist, or it's one that just isn't, I have this memory of somebody coming up saying like, you got to play Sammy Hagar. And I'm like, what? And this is not like a long time ago. And I was like, what? Like, first of all, what do I play? Second of all, no one's going to, I liked when it was Van Hagar back then. I mean, I was, whatever, but I was like, no. He goes, come on. And he gave me $5. I literally gave it back to him and said, I'm sorry, I can't take your money because there's no way I'm playing that song.
Right.
But it's weird. People think like, well, I tipped him, so of course you I go, what? No.
So I'm just going to completely drop a bomb on the dance floor for your $5?
I don't know what the bartender, I'm not a bartender. I don't know if they give him a 20 and say, hey, I know they told me to stop giving me drinks, but I want one. Here's the 20. I don't know. But that's it was an awkward position, but that doesn't happen very rarely when somebody comes up and gives me cash. But I would never have a tip jar in a million years. That's not how,
And the bar service is different, right?
It is different. I'm not trying to hate on any bars that had
and this kind of leans us into another part of this conversation, which is, okay, so there's certain companies, business models, right? Where there's like, a large corporation, for example, say like a photography business, and they just hire out contracted photographers. So in this case, you're going to want to consider, like, you may want to tip the vendor, like the actual person that came to your wedding. You're probably not going to want to tip the corporation that does the advertising and that part, right? So there's definitely a difference between, a massive conglomerate and tipping that entity, and then, your worker bees that survive on some of these tips, right?
Well, even us, there's an argument to be said that, you and I own the company. Well, if we have other people that do our planning and we have 4 other DJs that go out all the time, it is different as the owner versus a contractor or 1090 or an employee, right? It's a little different. I would love for our team to get a tip over me. But people don't always look at that. And we're a small business, so it's not like we're a conglomerate.
And I was going to say that's the difference I'm trying to make, right? And we are actually getting a tip when we work the events. It's not like someone who had one of our DJs as a DJ then tips us.
No.
Then that's totally different. So I think it's just good to differentiate between those things, right?
Oh, for sure.
And make sure the money goes where you want it to go, like for the right person that you intended it to,
But speaking of money, let's talk about the other side of this because I did a video recently where there was this very cute program and it had the front, it had the wedding party, had a little picture. It was like an extra, read all about it. John
very
and
cute,
Samantha are getting married today. It was very cute. And it's a very charming way to have your program. And on the back, it said, where do people travel from? And a picture of the States with places people come. It had some quick Q&A about the couple. And then at the bottom right, it had a QR code and it said honeymoon fund. Holy cow. Whee! On the Instagram, it is about 11 million views because people started arguing.
Yep.
They said, that's so tacky. And I was like, what is the difference between that and a registry? And if the couple have already been together, they don't need a blender. They don't need a set of knives, right? Like this, I found, and again, people are going to come back at us for this, but I find very different. They were like, that's tacky.
Okay,
why is it tacky? What is tacky?
I'm going to play devil's advocate here.
Go ahead,
Some of the people were saying that it was tacky because they had already bought you a gift and now they feel like you're asking for more money on top of it.
But I don't think so.
Well,
if you already bought a gift,
that's not true.
Then you could say, well, I brought them a gift.
Let's talk about what does actually happen, because people do purchase gifts ahead of time from a registry sometimes, right? And sometimes included in your invitations or on your wedding website, you can have a honeymoon fund ahead of the event. But what is kind of common is to have a honeymoon fund jar out on the sign-in table, or to do a money dance, or to, like we just said, have a honeymoon fund. So it is sometimes assumed that that is in addition to a gift.
Right. But
Okay.
I think this is almost like the technology has moved along.
Right.
I think registries work. Some people still register because maybe it is you're moving out of an apartment and you're moving in together. Maybe you bought a house. And for those of you that have gone from an apartment to a house, you roll in there and you're like, oh my God, I have nothing. I have no stuff. I don't have any of the things for a house. And it's a big expense when you go into your first house to get all the stuff, right?
Right.
But other people are like, we're going on a honeymoon, and just, I would love to have just cash, right? And I don't think that's a big ask, because the other thing that came up on that video, tons of people were like, this is an American thing? Because we have a lot of followers from outside of the country.
True.
And they were like, in our culture, people give an envelope and it's got cash in it. That's what they do.
Right.
And this is just an easier way than having to either hit the ATM, buy a card, whatever. You just like scan it and here's $100 or whatever.
Right.
Put it towards dinner on the beach in Cabo or whatever. And that, you should go back and look at our honeymoon fund podcast.
Honey fund. Yeah.
Honey fund. Because that was the whole thing.
Ideal. Right.
Oh, it was like, and for those who didn't catch it, it was like a registry, and it said, even if you were like, I'm in college, I don't have $100 even to give you, but hey, here's $15, and look, you can mark ice cream on the boardwalk on your honeymoon as a thing, and it's on your registry, and you click it, and it's like you bought the blender, right? It's incredibly cute, but something like that I think it's an amazing, clever way to use technology as opposed to opening up a 1,500
But I'm going to differentiate
cards.
once again for you. I think the difference that people were trying to argue was that there's both, right? Because there is a difference. There's a difference between putting out your honeymoon fund ahead of time in your invitations on your wedding website as part of that, and then sitting down at the ceremony and turning over the program and seeing a QR code and being asked for money at that point. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I agree with you. I'm just saying that that's the argument that they were trying to make.
Possibly.
Mm-hmm.
But then that's in the same category as the money dance.
It is. In the dollar dance, money dance, that's the same thing as having the honeymoon jar out there on your sign-in table. So again, it's
as a guest,
totally up to you guys.
One more step. As a guest, if I showed up and I saw the honeymoon fund, I wouldn't be like, how dare they ask for more money? I would be like, oh, well, that'd be for somebody that showed up and said, like, I never got them a gift or whatever.
Right. That's true too.
Because that happens all the time. Like, or you were just a friend and you're like, well,
what do I get?
You look around going like, holy cow, they just fed us a full course meal. I've been drinking all night on their tab.
Yep.
I'll kick in a little bit, something, right? Like I would have paid more than this on an average Thursday night going out to the bar with my guys. I would have spent $200 on booze that night or whatever people spend. I don't know. Or dinner.
That's a lot.
It's like put it, here's $50, put it towards your bill or whatever. Like because Lord knows, as we started this whole thing, weddings are expensive.
Right.
Very expensive.
Right. And I really think too, from the couples that we talk with and as many weddings as we've done, it's really just convenience. And so I don't think any couple is like out there trying to like make money off their wedding, right?
No.
They've invested so much time and money already that they're trying to give a convenient way to, like we said, fund their honeymoon or maybe their new life together. And you don't have to scan the QR code. That's totally up to you as a guest.
That's exactly it.
Right.
For every one person that said like, this is tacky, there were probably 20 that said, oh my God, what a great idea. I'm totally stealing this, which is the whole thing that we do with social media. When we show up at a wedding, or if I show up and you're not there, I'm always scanning the room like, what can I share with all the brides that follow us? Or the couples or the moms or whomever is following us and say like, oh my God, that is such a clever guest book, table layout, song selection, whatever it is. Yeah. I'm like, this is great. And there's going to be one person that loves it and one person that hates it.
Yep.
But my goodness, that really, the program already. Just start with the program, take off the QR code. That's very divisive. And there are people have already got a camp.
Them?
I hate the programs. I love the programs.
Right.
The three big ones are the programs, favors, and having kids at the wedding. People have a camp and they will defend their opinion till they're blue in the face. But then you add the QR code. I think that's why that one just, it's over 11 million views on
it's
Instagram.
crazy.
And it's only 2 weeks ago. That's crazy.
Something I'm going to mention too, this has nothing to do with tipping or money, but something fun that you can do with a QR code. Speaking of technology, right? And maybe you want to use a QR code, but you don't want money. You can use it to get photos, right? So there are sites. I think the one that I found was called Guest Pix, and it's PIX. And you can create a QR code for your event. And as the night goes on, people can scan and upload photos that they've taken, candid photos on their phone or whatever, and it'll go to this gallery. And then in the next day or two, you can see all these photos right away from your event. I think that's so fun.
It is, because you have to wait a month sometimes to get your photos or
right,
your video.
Professional.
Yeah, to get your videos back. But and it's really great because they're going to be different perspectives, different fun parts that happen. Your cousins were at a table and they took a picture. Scan all that stuff. Share that with the couple.
Share it.
Because they absolutely want to see that stuff rather than just, I hope I'm following you on Facebook or whatever, and you happen to post it or Instagram.
Right. The other thing is hashtags. And as you know, if you follow us, I love to do hashtags. We offer them in our shop. So if you are struggling to come up with a hashtag, check out our shop.
It's fun how you slipped that in there.
Yeah. But hashtags work the same way, right? So you can upload those photos with the hashtag.
And some people put them, it doesn't have to be a program that was handed out at the ceremony. These were, the last one I saw that had the QR code for the pictures was on their plate. So when they sat down, they saw a plate, had the thank you from the couple. It had a little icons on how the day was, the timeline. Yeah. And then there was a QR code, like, please share any pictures you grabbed.
It was so cute.
You know what I've been doing lately?
What?
So I've taken many videos of the private last dance, just the two of them. And I'm always a little bit, it's private. There have been people that have been really like, oh my God, I didn't know this was a thing. I want to do it. And that's exactly why I do it. To say, I don't know if you've thought about it, but at the end of the night, give yourself 10 minutes on the timeline, kick everybody out, hand out sparklers, shut the doors, and the couple can have one last dance.
10 minutes. I need 3 minutes. I'm not letting people out there.
People do half hour sometimes. I'm
no.
It's not going to take us a half hour. I'm always like, I have guilt. I'm like, I'm contracted to 11.
It's cold
take
outside.
A half hour. Yeah, it's cold outside. It does take a minute sometimes to herd the cats outside, but it can be done. Anyway, you shut the doors. The couple has one last dance. And the difference between that dance and any other dance in the night is all the pressure from the day is like, it's like gone. And you're like, babe, we did it. You know, you're there on the dance floor. You have one last dance. You're still in your dress. He's still in his suit, or you're both in your dress or whatever. But you get that moment together and you're just like, the tears, my God.
So many.
Everybody, both of them just bawling. Yeah. And it's beautiful. So I used to take a video of this and I always felt like I was a bit intrusive, and sometimes we see them and you don't post it. Yep. I've been like, as we're shuffling everybody out, I asked one of them, hey, who's got their phone?
Yep.
And the bride sometimes like, mine's back in the ring. But the groom's like, I've got mine right here. I go, open it up, give me your video. And I videotape it for them. Yes. And then it's on their phone. So on the drive back, they're like, oh my God, there we are. Because
the next morning or something. Yeah.
Because we have one of our former brides watches our kids.
Yeah.
So Chelsea babysits for us. And we initially found them. I remember very clearly at an open house, sat down at the table with them. And I'm like, what are y'all doing? They're like, planning a wedding. I go, hey, we just talked for a while. We bonded. And then randomly she showed up at our house because we found her on care.com. Remember?
Yes.
She walked in and you were like, oh, you're engaged, huh?
And I was trying to hit her up if she needed a DJ.
And she was like, oh, I just hired my DJ. And then I walked in the room and I go, what the? And she go, here he is. And I go, that was really weird. I swear to God, that's what happened. But anyway,
you have videos on your phone.
I had videos on my phone. I was going back and clearing up some space. And I go, hey, look. And I showed her, I go, look, I have these videos. And I said, here's one of your private last dance. And she looked at me and she goes, what? And they only had photography. They didn't have a videographer.
Right.
She was like, oh my God. And I go, please let me share this with you. But I mean, how random. It was months, if not years later.
Right.
And she goes, I never saw that. So I go, oh my God. I mean, I couldn't believe I almost deleted it. I'm like, wait, this is Chelsea's wedding. She's sitting the kids this weekend. Let me go. But anyway, that's a random story. But but when she mentioned that, that's what kind of said like, I need to just grab the couple's phone. And
I love that you do that.
It is really great. It's a thing we do, but you can do that too. Like give it to your DJ. DJ, would you mind? Because once they start they're just starting to wrap up cords and pull tape off the floor, maybe hand them their phone and say, would you mind? And they're like, yeah, most of them would probably do so.
We've covered a lot.
There we go.
We started with tipping. We ended with the private last dance, which is pretty appropriate. So guys, if you don't already, you can follow us on TikTok, on Instagram. You can check out all our resources at theweddingduo.co. It's .co, not .com. If you want to inquire about our virtual planning, us actually doing your wedding, you can email us at hello@theweddingduo.co.
Not .com.
Not .com. I feel like we've missed a lot of emails because of the .com versus .co. But you guys, this has been a great episode. We're going to continue to do episodes weekly, and we hope you enjoy our topic today.
Can we put a bow on this real quick? Because I know there's
I
a
just
lot of...
did.
The money, the tipping part. So for me as a DJ, right, I've been doing this for a long time. You've been doing this for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
When I get a card, it's very sweet when I get a card too as well. I mean, so that's very nice. But and open it up 9 times out of 10. If there's a tip, it's $100. It's just like here's a C note for your work. Thank you. I mean, I've gotten $50,
which was accurate according to our chart.
It is.
That was probably the only
for sure.
one.
That was pretty accurate for the DJ one. I've gotten $50. I've gotten $400 before. Which I'm always like, but if I open the, I'm like, oh my god! Like, I mean, that blows me away, blows my hair back, as I like to say. But most of the time, it's just $100, which is very sweet. But again, I don't expect it, but that's, if I'm opening an envelope, that's very common.
Right.
And I think photographers, videographers, they're right there in the trenches with me the whole night. And when I see envelopes handed out, we don't walk up and compare, but it's very common. I've talked to them enough to say that's what they usually get. The percentages, that one blew my mind when I saw the percentages.
Yeah, it is a lot. And something we can also end this on is saying, it is not in the budget for you, right? You've really struggling and the funds are just limited. But somebody did a stellar job and really, was the backbone of your event. Write them a review. Blast the review wherever you can. Facebook, Google, The Knot, wherever you want. That means so much. I mean, to us, I can only speak for us, but I think also for other vendors. So you can kind of feel good in doing that for them as well.
You know, the only time I got a percentage, I remember this very clearly because the bride was a server. She was a waitress. And she goes, we got to do 20%. And I was looking at her like,
you do? And
they were doing a lot of lighting and everything else. So it was a big bill. But her brother was offered to pay the DJ bill. He's like, I'm going to pay for your DJ. And he was in the NBA. So I was like, if brother is in the NBA, you should have seen his SUV. He had the rims. It was like a whole thing. Wow. He was 6th man of the year one year.
Nice.
I know you don't know what that is. But
no, basketball.
Basketball. It was basketball, but there's an award. You get an MVP. But the guy coming off the bench is the best guy off the bench. It's called the 6th man award.
That's fancy.
Across the NBA, it's huge. And he won it one year. He was a 3-point shooter. Yeah.
Paid your bill.
He paid the bill, and I'm like, I'll let him pay 20%. But that's the only time that I remember ever getting a percentage. And it was big. But anyway, there you go. That's a side note.
All right, guys. So until next time, let's end it the way we always do.
It's a big day.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very personal day. Don't listen to your cousin. But don't get talked into something you don't want to do or get talked out of something you have your heart set on. Put on the blinders, talk to your fiance and say, what do we want to do? And what can we afford?
You do you. All right. Happy planning. Let's try that again.
You can do it. Come on.
Happy wedding planning, y'all. We will seal it with a kiss.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey, so thanks for listening to our podcast. If you found any of this information helpful and you know someone who may be engaged or is a maid of honor, maybe you could tell them and share it with a friend.
Absolutely. So screenshot this episode, share it on Instagram, on Facebook, and tag the wedding duo. We promise to share the love back. Also, if you are interested in more resources or the show notes, you can go to theweddingduo.co. We have one-on-one virtual sessions, a shop, all sorts of fun stuff. Check it out.